Hi everyone, my name is Suzanne and I'm a Chinese metaphysics master in Hong Kong. Today we're going to explore stratagem number 8 out of Sun Tzu's Art of War. So for those of you who have been following this series for the past few weeks, we are going through Sun Tzu's philosophical work on how to overcome competition, how to overcome an enemy or an opposing force. And obviously, when this work was written in the old times, this was really only used for warfare on the battlefield. But in a modern context, we use this very often when we have to deal with opposing market forces, with a business competitor, or just in general in a situation where we need to somehow outmaneuver our competition and our opponents. They don't have to be enemies, but of course, in a market situation, you always need to be one step ahead. And so with Sun Tzu's Art of War, we are thankfully provided with some clever strategies that we can use to do exactly that. Now, there are altogether 36 stratagems, as they are called, or we can also call them strategies for easier reference. And today we're talking about the 8th strategy out of the 36. Now, what is important to understand is that from a Bazi astrology perspective, each one of us resonates with different strategies differently. Yeah, so some of us may have a great affinity for 2 or 3 strategies, and others don't align with those strategies at all. And that's all seen in your Bazi astrology chart. So if you know based on your chart what works best for you, or which strategy you have the biggest affinity with or comes to you really easily, it makes it much, much simpler to then just pick and choose the strategy that you need to actually overcome your competition. So first things first, as always, we need to plot our Bazi chart. So you can go to this link here and plot your chart. Ideally, you have the date and time of birth, but if you don't have the time of birth, that's also fine. We can work without it in this context, but it's always better. It gives you more details if you have the time of birth as well. And so then once you have plotted your chart, you will end up with a natal chart that looks like this. And what we are focusing on is this part here. We practitioners call those the earthly branches. If you're a newbie, these are the animal signs in your chart. And as you can see, we actually have 4 animal signs in our chart. 1 in the year, 1 in the month, 1 in the day, and 1 in the hour. They can be 4 completely different ones, as you see here in this chart, or you can have repeating ones. It doesn't matter. Yeah, just check which ones you actually have in the chart. And these earthly branches or animal signs give us an indication of which strategy we resonate with more. And because we obviously have more than just 1 animal signs in the chart, or at least the majority of us has more than 1 animal sign in the chart, we can employ more than 1 strategy. So take note of which animal sign you have here. And then let's have a look at this strategy number 8, which is called Openly Repair the Walkway, Secretly March to Chencang. Now, what that means is basically to approach the enemy openly and very frankly, but then secretly find a passageway into their weak spot. Yeah, that's essentially what it means, concealing what you're actually doing without necessarily harming the enemy, but finding a way into the marketplace. Now, this particular strategy will work best for those who have the goat and or the dog in their Bazi chart. So you don't have to have both. It would be great if you have both in the Bazi chart, because that will give you a really strong affinity with this particular strategy. But if you have either the goat or the dog, or as I said, both in your chart, then this is a strategy that you can definitely employ whenever you need to deal with a competitive situation, whenever you need to deal with, I wouldn't want to call it an enemy, but someone you need to outwit and outmaneuver. Now, the strategy itself asks you to, in essence, expose parts of your actions and use those actions to conceal whatever else you are doing. Now, on the surface, for example, everything looks completely above board and acceptable, while underneath you're doing something that may not be ethically correct. Now, I'm not saying that you need to do anything illegal. In many cases, you need to actually employ this particular strategy depending on what kind of profession you're in. So, for example, if you are in a profession like mine, where we do give life advice based on a Bazi astrology chart, astrology is something that is not accepted in all cultures across the board. Some cultures even outright outlaw astrologies and astrology readings. Now, instead of then going in and advertising for astrology readings, you can just advertise your services as, for example, life coaching or life advisory, right? So you're not doing anything wrong. You're just reframing what you're doing. And by doing that, you're exposing parts of your actions. You actually do life coaching, for example, but secretly or underneath, without even the client maybe knowing what exactly you're doing and how you are deriving all the advice. You're actually doing an astrology reading, for example. It also works in other professions. So, for example, if someone is um, a sex coach or an intimacy coach, right? Many cultures don't find that acceptable. So when you reframe that and just say, I'm a relationship coach, that suddenly makes it much, much more acceptable. It's fairly neutral. And so then people will actually hire you for your services. And while you're doing that, you can then obviously sprinkle in some intimacy coaching as well. So these are the kind of scenarios that you can use this strategy in. So it's not just looking above board, but then underneath you're doing something illegal. Yeah, obviously that's also part of this strategy, but very often we can employ this completely differently. Now, basically mask your unconventional actions. They don't have to be illegal by just using very conventional, commonplace titles, descriptions, and actions, yeah, or promotion marketing messages, right? Now, what you can also do when you have this particular when these animal signs appear in your chart, you can also align yourself or your service with, let's say, a charity, or you sponsor something that is very, very widely acceptable, and that makes your brand more acceptable. That makes your service or product more acceptable. Yeah, so these kind of things, especially when you're operating in a culturally sensitive context. All right. So this is in essence what strategy number 8 is. For all those of you with goat and dog in the chart, this works really, really well. Of course, some of us need to employ this even though we don't have these particular animal signs in the chart. That's also possible. It may just not come quite as easily for you. All right. I hope this helped. If you have any questions, as always, I'm happy to answer your questions. Just put them in the comments below or send me an email. My contact details are in the notes below. I'd love it if you like the video, if you subscribe to my channel, and if you share it with anyone who may be interested. All right. See you soon.